Hey guys, what's up? Matt from Raceback Esports here. Just a quick video today on F1 2018 setups for each track that I've used throughout the game for mainly league racing, but definitely some career mode, time trial as well. So we got some dry setups and some wet setups where you'd expect some rain more commonly. So gonna head to time trial and yeah, show you some setups that I've been using. So each setup is obviously unique for each track. So yeah, I basically have 21 dry setups and maybe a few extra depending on what what mode I'm using or racing in. So yeah, I've kind of stuck with the same setup for each track most of the game. I've made a few tweaks here and there. Usually when I get to like a second season of career mode or a second season of league racing is when I get to that back to the track before and maybe do some time trial and use some different setups to see, you know, if someone's found something that's quicker or gives you an advantage. So yeah, as you can see, we've just gone to Australia. I've got 80 friends at the moment. So where am I at the moment? I think 19th. So 119.7. No assist. That was that was set in October last year. So I haven't updated my Melbourne setup in quite a while, but I actually really like it. It's one that I really like. So I'll start with that one. So I'm just going to go through each track in order. So go Australia first. As you can see, I updated this one pretty recently in April. So let's have a look. Going through here. So Aero 5.8. Most of the setups in 2018 had a big disparity between front wing and rear wing aero because you could set the ballast so high and offset that differential, so you could run really low front wings and high rear wing because you could put more weight at the back of the car to get the car to turn in, so you didn't really need as much front downforce. So big positive for F1 2019 is that ballast is no longer in the regulations. It has to be stable in the car, so it's not adjustable, which means we'll have more realistic or regular levels of downforce for each track setup. So for Australia, not too big a difference actually between front and rear. We've gone 5.8. Need especially, it doesn't have too long a straight, so you don't really need top speed is not that critical around Australia. I think it's more about the second half of the first sector and the third sector is where you make up most of your time through the slower corners. So that's why you probably need a bit more front downforce than most tracks on F1 2018. So 5.8. Transmission, the diff on throttle 65, off throttle 100. Suspension geometry, most tracks will be the camber all the way to the right, which is the lowest angle, I think, yep. And then the toe all the way to the left, which is also the lowest angle. So that seems to give the car the most stable geometry of suspension settings. And yeah, like I said, that's pretty consistent in most tracks. There's not too many tracks where that isn't the case. So moving on to actual suspension, so pretty soft as far as the springs go. 3.3, and then quite a bit of anti-roll at the front with 11 and 7 at the rear, and quite low ride height as well with 3.4. Brakes, I'm running 89%, but obviously you can adjust that to your preferences. You can run higher or lower. I tend to run pretty even front to rear brake bias with maybe 52 to 54, 55, the most I'd use on any track in F1 2018. So for Melbourne it's 52. I like a bit more rear brake than probably most people because it helps the car turn into corners as well. Yep, moving on to the tyre pressures. 23.8 for the front and 21.1, so that's actually a bit of a difference. Usually they're a lot closer. And then for the weight distribution, which is the last time we'll see this in an F1 game, the ballast is at 8, and just to flick back, so that relates quite heavily with the aerodynamics of 5.8, so not too much ballast, just a couple of clicks off regular. Yeah, really love that setup. It's pretty quick. Like I said, it was pretty early on. I got that set up last October, and I stuck with it the whole game. So definitely one of my favourites. Moving on to, oh, do I have an Australian wet setup first? I don't believe I do. So yes, it does rain in Australia, and particularly in Melbourne, quite a bit actually. But I don't have an Australian wet setup. So we'll move on to Bahrain. I've got a couple of setups for that, but this one is the one I use the most, and here's probably the first example of a high ballast, low front wing setup. So I'm running 1.8, and I'll flick straight to the ballast straight away, so you can see that it's 8 as well. Yeah, so actually not too high, but just enough to offset the lack of front downforce. You do need to be able to flick the car left to right pretty, and left to right, right to left pretty easily around Bahrain, even though, and top speed is crucial as well with that long straight. So you need a car that's pretty responsive, but also slippery in a straight line. Transmission at 175 for probably the most traction. Like, you've got a lot of heavy braking zones, and you need good traction out of those slow corners as well. So that's all the way up to 100. Suspension geometry, I'll just skip over this most of the time, all the way to the right, all the way to the left. And suspension running 3.3 again, same as Australia. Similar anti-roll to Australia as well, bit less, 10.6 this time, and more even ride height at 3.4. Brakes, a bit less pressure, mainly because of that double left-hander in sector 2. That's very tricky. So it's very easy to lock up there, and a little bit more front brake bias, 53 this time. 23 psi and 20.7 on the rear, so the tyre pressures, and 8 as ballast, as I said. So yeah, it doesn't rain at Bahrain, so we'll move on to China. Now I'll just have a quick look to see if I updated that one. Sorry, I try and keep my setups all in order, which I'm sure everyone does, but without a sort function, it becomes a bit of a mess by the end of the game. So I believe this is the one. That's a pretty old setup as well. I think it's one I used from TRL Limitless when it was called Veloce or something. So 4.6, do need a little bit more front wing at China as well. And I'll just go to ballast, which is 7. So it's a bit more defaulty, if that's even a word. Yeah, so 4.6, 70 and 75 for the diff, all the way to the right, all the way to the left. 4.3 on the suspension, 10.7 and 3.3, so pretty low ride height. It's a pretty bumpy track, so suspension pretty soft. Ride height for low ride height for good top speed with that long back straight. Brakes down to 80 for this one. Again, few spots really easy to lock up at China. Front brake bias pretty low again at 53. Tyres at 23 and 20.7. I think that's exactly the same as it was at Bahrain. So yep, that's that one. I do have a wet setup for China, I'm pretty sure. I'm probably going to eat my words in a second. And yes, I'll take that back. I don't have a wet setup. But yeah, basically for every wet setup, you want to be adding or running the tires as flat as possible. So lowest pressures in the tires, and adding as much ride height as you can, but running soft suspension. So that's the biggest thing. And then obviously upping the aero as well. So probably 2 to 3 clicks on the front and rear than you usually run. So that's pretty typical wet setup for most tracks. Yeah. Right, so this one is Baku. So Baku obviously has the longest straight in Formula 1, so need a car that's very, very fast in a straight line. Difficult to overtake in just about every other spot on the track, so it doesn't really matter how fast you are through the tight and twisty stuff. As long as you're quick on the back straight, you're probably going to be difficult to pass. So 1 for wings, and then 8 on ballast as well. So haven't really gone above 8 yet on the ballast. I'm not sure we will. Maybe a couple of tracks. I can't remember. Transmission 65 and 100. It's a very slippery surface at Baku, so kind of want a bit more of an unlocked diff on throttle to kind of account for the little bit of wheel spin you'll probably get. Yeah, it's just a little bit easier. And then 100 off throttle. Suspension all the way right, all the way to the left. 3.3 again. You could probably drop this down to 2.2 if you wanted to, but 3.3 seems to work pretty well for me. There are some curves you really need to attack at Baku, so I wouldn't go any higher than that. Anti-roll 11.7 and front ride height a little bit higher because of those curves, particularly through the second sector with the castle section and the big drop away corner left-hander where it has a big curve, and there's a lot of time to be gained from attacking that one pretty hard. So 5.6 on the ride height. Brakes all the way to 100% for Baku, because you want as much stopping power as you can in that at the end of that big long straight, and at the end of the second straight down into turn 3 as well. 54% towards the front for the bias. Tyres 23.4 and 21.1, and ballast at 8 as I said. So I do quickly have a Baku wet setup. So just a difference. Still needed to be slippery in straight line. Diff 170. Now this is kind of interesting, but all the way to the left and all the way to the right rather than the other way around this time. And the suspension, so stiffer springs. You probably jack that ride harder way more. Brakes still pretty powerful. Tires, actually this setup probably wouldn't be that accurate, to be honest, because you probably want really low tire pressure like that. And 8. So yeah, I think that's an older one, so we won't give that one too much time. Baku, I think it's Spain after Baku, so I'm not sure if I have another Spain set up. Nope. Okay. So Spain, 610 wings, need a lot of aero, very aero dependent circuit, with 8 ballast on that one. Also need a lot of traction, so 170% for the diff settings, all the way to the right, all the way to the left for the geometry, and then the suspension 3.3, no anti-roll basically. So yeah, very soft for those long corners, and then ride height at 4.4. Brakes 80 and 53. You could probably run a bit higher than 80. I think that might be a bit low. I could probably jack that up now. And 23.4 and 21.5 for tyres, and ballast at 8. So I don't have wet setup for Spain. So I'll move on to Monaco. I'll check if I've got a wet setup for that first. I don't. I've been quite lazy with my early tracks with the wet setup. I think most of them are the European tracks later in the season. So my Monaco setup is a fairly old one as well, but I like it. Nearly max aero 1011 with 8 ballast. So there's probably a common theme here that I like 8 ballast. And that's kind of my comfort zone with how oversteery I like set up to be. I like it pretty stable. I like a bit of extra turning, but yeah, not too oversteery where it's to the point where when the tyres get a bit old that you're slipping all over the place. And yeah, I've tried more ballast and it doesn't end well. So 65 and 100 for the diff. A little bit different for the geometry. Nearly max all the way to the right for the camber on the front, just a little bit less, and then a bit more toe to balance that. But the rear is still all the way to the right and all the way to the left. Suspension really soft, 3.2, not much anti-roll, 5.3, and a bit more ride height at 5.6. Brakes at 89 and 53. Definitely want some powerful brakes at Monaco. Also got that high level of downforce helping you stop as well, more drag, and some lower tyre pressures for maximum traction, 22.2 and 19.9, and ballast at 8 as I said. So yeah, I like that one as well. Right, on to Canada. So this is another TRL Limitless Veloce setup, and I did have, as you would have seen, another Canada setup there. I think it was running 8 wings or 1 7 wings, but I find this one better. Just that little bit of extra front downforce. It's not as fast in a straight line on the straights, which is very important in Canada, obviously. But yeah, it's just so much easier to drive that I kind of stick with this one. So 3 7 wings, 8 ballast again. Alright, nearly max traction on the diffs there. Suspension's the same. Really soft suspension this time with really high anti-roll. You want a really responsive car through the high-speed chicanes at this track. So what? Basically 3 high-speed chicanes at this track that you want really good responsiveness, and then pretty low ride height for good straight line speed. Powerful brakes as well, 87/52. The tyres 23 at the front and 20.7 at the rear with the 8 ballast again. So really like that setup. It's probably one of my favourites. I'm quite good at Canada too, so that setup's been pretty good to me. What is the next track? France, of course. Another Veloce setup. Big fan of his, obviously. 1 5 wings. I think I've had 4 or 5 different France setups because it was a new track for 2018. Took a while for people to work out kind of what worked, what was quick around France. So I remember running fairly high downforce to begin with because of the all the corners and stuff. But yeah, it kind of ends up being more about straight line speed around France. Yeah, so 1 5 is actually pretty low downforce with 8 ballast yet again, and then pretty good traction as well, 177 all the way to the right, all the way to the left. 3.3, 10.8, good responsiveness. 3.4 for good straight line speed, and powerful brakes as well, 89/53, 23.4 and 21.5. So you can see probably from the first 7-8 tracks that there's not too much difference between my setups. There's definitely a common theme with softer springs around 3, 4, a bit of anti-roll, like medium to high level anti-roll, I'd say most tracks, and then pretty low ride height as well with powerful brakes. and 8 ballast with the relative aerodynamic level, which for France is 1.5. You could probably run 1.6 as well if you find you're not getting enough turn in. Don't think I have a France wet setup. I'll just check. Oh, there's another France setup, but I don't think that's the one I use. The time trial one. Nope. I only really started doing wet setups pretty late in F1 2018. So Austria is the next one. That's definitely not my setup. 1.6. You can see I'll try and save the wing level next to the name as well, so that just gives me an idea of what the setup is. But my Austria setup is 1.8. There it is. Okay, so 1.8 wings with 9 ballast, so a bit more oversteery this setup. Don't really have too many long corners, so you really need good turning. Yeah, so you can get away with running a bit higher ballast, I think, at Austria. Some people are even running 10 or 11. I've seen. So yeah, 1.8 and 9 on the ballast. Pretty low diff settings, 70, 60, all the way to the right, all the way to the left. On the geometry, now really soft springs, so you can attack curbs. It's actually one of the bumpiest tracks on the calendar as well. So yeah, really bumpy straights. Super soft suspension. Not much anti-roll needed. As I said, not too many long corners. They're all pretty, you know, they're all quite short. So yeah, it's fine. Low-ish ride height, rear's a bit higher. Yeah, you really need to attack. I think these settings are basically set up to attack the curbs at Austria. You need to really like get on the curbs on corner entry, taking as much apex as you can, and then taking as much curb as you can on exit as well. That's the trick to being fast around Austria. I think I can do on this setup probably 103 something. So it's a pretty decent setup. Brake pressure 85, 83. Tires 22.2 and 21.1. Ballast at 9, as I said. So just quickly see if I've got a wet setup. I don't think so. Austria wet, I do. Okay. So this is our Austria wet setup, 111. So you can see, put all the extra downforce on the rear, and the weight distribution 11. So yeah, basically the further apart you can put the front and rear aeros. So obviously 111 is the furthest apart they can be. That makes the car really stable, and therefore you can add more ballast to it, which will unstable the car in a way. So it'll kind of make the car want to swap ends going into corners. So like the rear overtake the front because that has more weight in the rear. But the rear downforce, the more you add, obviously makes it more planted, so it stops from doing that. But you get really good turning is the effect of that. Transmission 90, 70. I'd probably usually in the wet run 50 on throttle just about at every track. So yeah, you can make that adjustment if you like, just for wheel spin. Geometry's the same. You know, front ride height all the way up, low springs, and need a bit of anti-roll because obviously in the wet you're obviously corner slower than in the dry, so you probably are turning for a lot longer. Brakes, a lot less pressure. That's personal though, I guess. 53 bias, and then minimum tyre pressures in the wet as at most tracks. Okay, moving on to Britain. Now I believe Britain 1.8. Is that the next track? I'm just getting my order mixed up. I think it is, yeah. 6. So that's an older setup, the 2.8 one. I'll just move on to this 1.8 one. So Silverstone, definitely one of the more fun tracks to drive in the F1 games. It's a real driver's track. It's got a bit of everything. It's high speed. It's got flowing corners. It's got tight corners. Yeah, it's really good. So Aero 1.8 with 8 ballast, back to the standard 8 ballast for me. Transmission 50 and 68, so I don't need too much traction. There's not a lot of slow speed stuff, and when it is, you're kind of accelerating as you're turning, so you're not accelerating in a straight line. So I guess the difference being, if you're accelerating in a straight line, you could lock the diff a bit more, maybe all the way to 100, because you're kind of turning while you're accelerating. For example, our last couple of corners, or yeah, there's a couple of spots actually on Silverstone. So yeah, need it kind of unlocked so you don't get wheel spin. Now, much different geometry. It's kind of all set. I'm not sure if they're set even deliberately, but yeah, it's a bit different for this track. So note those. And suspension 4.3, anti-roll 11.9, and ride height 2.5. The brakes need a hell of a lot of stopping power. So 90, 52, 23 and 21.1 with the ballast at 8, as I said. So moving on to Britain Wet 1 to 11. So quite a bit more extra downforce with 9 ballast. So one more click of rear to the rear. Diff basically unlocked. Only 5% locked on off throttle. Suspension back to the all the way to the right, all the way to the left, excuse me. So this setup probably wasn't based on my dry setup. Yeah, this tip of springs, a bit more responsiveness, and anti-roll as well for that, and ride height all the way up in the wet. Obviously, still need a lot of stopping power, 90 and 52, and then minimum tire pressures in the wet as you want. Okay, what is after Silverstone? Germany. I like this setup a lot. It's definitely one of my favourites, this Germany setup. Again, it's one I probably didn't change too much throughout the game. So it's a 1.8 setup. Same as Silverstone actually, with 8 ballast. 170, accelerating in a straight line a lot of the time, so need that lock diff, max traction, all the way to the right, all the way to the left. Suspension really soft, so you can attack those curves to get maximum time. Need a fair bit of anti-roll as well. Really low at front ride height, quite high at the back, or a little bit higher at the back rather. Yeah, straight line speed is important. As he's braking, so maximum braking power at the end of the parabolica, you need that. And then tyre pressure 23 and 21.1, ballast at 8. Move quickly on to the Germany wet setup, which I have down here. Okay, 3.9, so a couple of clicks on the front and 1 at the back. And the ballast is still the same actually, so you could probably use 9 if you're comfortable with that. But because I brought the front and rear wing closer, it's not quite as stable as the dry setup, so probably stick with 8. Again, in the wet, probably best to run with an unlocked diff, all the way to the right, all the way to the left. Kind of firmish springs. You could run softer if you wanted to, but yeah, whatever feels good. Same anti-roll as the dry setup, but with maximum ride height. Still maximum brakes, but this time had like the most even bias you can get, from a bit extra turning on braking. And then minimum tire pressure, again in the wet, let's go to Hungary. Now, is that my current Hungary setup? Okay, this must be my current Hungary setup. So Hungary's one of my favourite tracks as well. Higher downforce needed, so 611. So you got maximum aero at the rear, quite a bit at the front as well. Running 8 ballast. Quite an unlocked differing transmission settings there, but all the way to the right, all the way to the left. Pretty soft suspension, bit of anti-roll, and really low ride height. Yeah, I'm not quite sure why that is. I guess maybe you don't really need to attack the curves so much at Hungary, although there is that chicane where you probably could gain a lot of time by doing that, but I don't tend to take too much. Yeah, anyway, it's all personal, I guess, whatever you feel like. Brake pressure is 87 and bias is 52. Tyres 23 and 21.1 with that 8 ballast, as I said, so it's a pretty good setup as well. I do have a Hungary wet setup. Sorry, cancel that. I do not have a wet Hungary setup. So I believe the next track after Hungary is Belgium. Is that the Belgium one? I think it's a 1.5 setup. Belgium wet. No. There it is. Cool. Okay, yeah, Hungary. Yeah, Belgium. So this is my current, my go-to Spa setup. 1.5 wings with 7 ballast. So, I mean, again, this is quite personal, but I felt like any more than 7 ballast, that Eau Rouge became way too sketchy. Like, I prefer to be like really confident going through that section, and 7 ballast with 1.5 wings, I know I can do that flat, whereas 8 ballast, even though it's probably has a bit, it was just a little bit too oversteery for me, and because you're carrying so much speed, if you get out of shape, you can go very wrong very easily. So yeah, I prefer a bit more predictability, let's say, through that section. So 1, 5 and 7, 85 and 80 on the diff, all the way to the right, all the way to the left for the geometry, and suspension pretty soft, not much anti-roll needed, 7.3 and pretty low ride height for that top speeds. 87 and 54 for the brakes, 23 and 21.1 and 7 for the ballast, as I said. Now I do have a wet, definitely have the wet Belgian setup. Yeah. Okay, so 3.9, quite a bit more downforce, because you're going a bit slower and you need a bit more responsiveness in the wet, so I do put more ballast on, so up to 8, so 3.9 and 8, 90%, 70%, still need a lot of traction at Spa in the wet, so, and you're not kind of accelerating hard while you're turning on this track, so yeah, a lot of, particularly at the last corner, you need good traction, so that's why the diff is more locked. Now, a bit different geometry settings, you can fiddle around with those to please yourself. Suspension pretty soft, don't really need too much anti-roll, but need some extra ride height. Now, 70% on the brake pressure, pretty personal thing, that seems pretty low, so yeah, I could probably run at least 80, I'd say, and get used to that pretty easily. 52 on the bias, and a bit of tire pressure. that I think that's probably because you want some more top speed. But yeah, if you want more traction, you could basically put that down to no tyre pressure, but I think I had a bit of tyre pressure in there for some extra top speed and ballast at 8, as I said. So Belgium. Let's move on to Italy. Here we go. 1-4. That's the one. So probably the lowest, along with Baku, the lowest downforce setting in the game. So 1-4 wings, and 8 ballast again. For that one, maximum traction on throttle, a little bit off throttle as well. All the way to the right, all the way to the left. Really soft springs. I personally really like to attack the first chicane at the end of the long straight. Like I try to take it in third gear actually. I see a lot of people probably second gears, the regular or usual thing to do. Maybe even first gear for the second part of the chicane, the second corner. But I try to take it in third gear, carry as much speed as I can, and obviously to do that, you need to take as much curb as you can, and to do that, you need soft suspension. So 1-1, and a responsive car as well. So 11-11 on the anti-roll, and pretty low ride height. It's also really bumpy, so you can't go too low. Yeah, need a lot of stopping power. 87, 54, pretty easy to lock up though. So pretty personal thing. That one, 23 and 21.1, 8 ballast. As I said, definitely do have a wet Italy setup. Just load that. 1-7 with 9 ballast, so a bit extra downforce and more ballast. Diff a bit more unlocked. Yeah, all the way to the right, but a little, well, nearly half, well, it is half, setting on the rear toe. Suspension, still pretty soft, a little bit firmer. Still need a lot of anti-roll and front ride height jacked all the way up. A bit more stopping power in the wet. Sorry, a bit less stopping power in the wet, but still pretty high, and then low tire pressures, 9 ballast. Italy, after Italy, it's Singapore. So it's an older one, that 410 one. I think I'm running closer to 611 or something. So this is my current Singapore setup, 511. So quite high levels of downforce. Singapore, one of my favourite tracks for sure. I'm really good around there, and this setup is just perfect. Like I've tweaked it, and it's just so good to drive. And you need a setup that really makes the tyres last as well, because the hypersofts become like jelly after 4 or 5 laps around Singapore. So you need to be pretty kind on the tyres, but still be quick. And I think this setup's pretty good at doing that. So high levels downforce, 511, 9 ballast, bit of oversteer, but still pretty good as well. Unlocked throttle and locked on off throttle, all the way to the right, all the way to the left. 3-3 for the rear suspension, front suspension, bit of anti-roll, and pretty low ride height again. Brakes at 82 and 52, and tyres at 23 and 21.1 again. That one's a good setup. Not quite sure if I have a wet Singapore setup. Does not look like it, but I think that setup, you could use, all you'd need to do would be probably jack up the front ride height like that, and then just take the air out of the tyres and run minimum pressures. Maybe add some more aero, maybe 711, it'd be good. You've already got unlocked diff. You could probably unlock the off throttle some more if you wanted to. But yeah, I'd say that'd be pretty good in the wet. Maybe lower this, maybe this 80 or something. Yeah, I think that'd work pretty well. I'd be pretty confident with that. Okay, after Singapore, I believe it is Russia. Okay, I think it's this one, 1-7. Russia is probably a track, or the track I try to avoid the most. Even though I'm pretty good at it, I just don't find it fun. 1-7 wings and 9 ballast. That's surprisingly high, but I think it must be stable because I wouldn't save it otherwise. So 1-7 and 9, pretty unlocked diff on throttle, all the way to right, all the way to left. A bit stiffer springs for a bit more responsiveness and anti-roll as well. Pretty low ride height for that long straight. It's not too. Sorry, it's pretty easy to keep from locking up at Russia from memory, so that's why I run maximum brake pressure 23 and 20.7 and 9. So not quite sure if that's like the best wet Russian setup, but it does the job for me. I've got a wet setup for Russia as well, 1-11 and 8, 50-60, all the way right, all the way left. Maximum firmness in the springs, about the same anti-roll as the dry setup, maximum ride height, bit less brake pressure, even bias, and no air in the tyre, or minimum tyre pressures. Yep, that seems about right actually. So oh, I've gone up too far, apologies. Russia, okay, after Russia is USA. I'm not quite sure if I have a different one. Let me just check USA. Yeah, this one here. Yeah. Alright, USA is, I'd say, top 3 tracks of mine, and probably number 1 when it comes to how comparatively quick I drive around there. I've had some really good results in league races, some podiums against some really quick guys that I'm usually nowhere near. So yeah, I really like the circuit, and this this setup I feel really good with as well. So 1-8 aero and 9 ballast, so a bit extra oversteeriness, but it's not too much. It's not unstable. It's actually it's quite perfect, to be honest. Transmission 90 and 90. Geometry all the way to the right and all the way to the left. Really soft suspension. You need to use every inch of the curves on most corners, so pretty soft. A little bit of anti-roll. Actually pretty high ride height, 4.6. Not quite sure what that is, but it works with the setup, so won't question it too much. Brakes 85 and bias 54. Tyres bit extra in the front, 23.8 and 21.1 for the rear. Ballast at 9, as I said. So I do have a wet circuit of the Americas. Oh, I thought I saw a wet USA one. Yeah, there it is. Great. Okay, 5.11 and 8. So more aero, bit less oversteery. I'm sure 9 would work fine, maybe. Probably didn't try it. 70 and 80, all the way to the right, all the way left. Suspension still pretty soft, and a little bit of anti-roll and more ride height, but 9's probably the lowest you'd want. I wouldn't go any lower than that, definitely. Brake pressure right up, that's a surprise. Yeah. Must have been confident that day doing that setup. Yeah. maximum stopping power and minimum tyre pressures. Cool. Alright. Moving on to... I've got a TM at Marduk base setup there. Don't think I've really used that a lot. There's a Veloce Belgium setup, but I didn't really use that too much either. A France Tile try setup. 1.9, yeah, right. See, that was probably one of the setups that I was talking about earlier with more downforce. Okay, after USA, I don't know what this best one is. Lazy Matt. We got Mexico. So Mexico, actually the last 3 tracks I really didn't have I've totally forgotten Japan, by the way. Totally forgotten Japan. Okay, let's go back. Let's jump back to Japan, because Japan is definitely one of my favorites. How could I forget Japan? Sorry. Okay, so this is my Japanese setup. I just had a league race there last weekend, and I started 14th on the grid, and I finished P2, so I made up quite a number of positions. It was a really good race, actually, so I was pretty happy with that. Aero 2.9 and 8 on the ballast, pretty low, or unlocked diff, all the way to the right, all the way to the left. Suspension, pretty soft, don't need too much anti-roll, I find anyway, and pretty low ride height. Brakes, 80 and 53. It's pretty easy to lock up at Japan, surprisingly. So, yeah, I don't run under 80 too much, if ever. So 80 is actually pretty low for me. I like it around 90, maybe even 100 some tracks, as you've seen. So 23.4 and 21.1 for tyre pressures, and the ballast at 8, as I obviously enjoy. Do I have Japanese wet? Japan wet, yeah, that was the last one I did. Cool. 211 and 8 ballast, 1560, all the way to the right, all the way to the left. 3.3, 10.10, and maximum ride height 11.11. Brakes still the same, 80 and 52. Tyres, minimum pressures. Sorry Japan for forgetting you. Okay, I'll move on to Mexico now. Yeah, as I was saying, the last 3 tracks, Mexico, Brazil and Abu Dhabi, I don't really have good setups for those for most of the season. So it's pretty late. So they're probably the 3 I haven't put as much effort into my setups, but I'm still pretty happy with the ones I have. So Mexico 2.7 with 8 ballast again. Pretty unlocked transmission. I don't like a lot of yeah, I don't like it locked too much unless traction is absolutely critical. Geometry all the way to the right, all the way to the left. Suspension really soft. Track's super bumpy. Anti-roll 9.4 and ride height 4.5. Brakes maximum, absolute maximum for that long straight. It's pretty easy to lock up, but yeah, I think you get the hang of it, having maximum brake pressure pretty quickly. So, and you need it, so you gotta have that. 22.6 and 20.3 for the tyre pressures, and as I said, 8 for the ballast. I skipped to that before. Now I do have Mexico wet setup. It's a bit more in order now, so we don't have to jump around so much. Thank goodness. Alright, so 111, most stable setup you could have, basically, with 9 ballast, 85 and 75. Bit more locked than a dry setup, surprisingly, but yeah, you could personalize that and run. You could quite easily run 50. And you wouldn't get so much wheel spin. Yeah, personal preference maybe. All the way to the right, all the way to the left. Suspension's pretty stiff, surprisingly, but a lot of anti-roll and maximum, or close to maximum ride heights as well. Brakes 83, 52, so a bit less pressure. You still need quite a bit. 83 still heaps basically in the wet, for wet conditions. So yeah, tires, minimum pressures for maximum traction. Moving on to Brazil now. I've named this one Brazil 2. I wonder if there's a Brazil 1. I don't think there is. I don't know what I was thinking then. Brazil 2, let's do it. Alright, 2.7. I'll be using this actually in about an hour and a half for a league race, if it's not raining. Last race in AOR Oceania of F1 2018 before F1 2019 comes out. So 2.7 wings with 8 ballast. I love my 8 ballast, if you haven't noticed. Transmission pretty unlocked. All the way to the right, all the way left, as usual with the dry setup. Pretty soft suspension. Brazil again, super bumpy. So need that soft suspension, and also want to be attacking the pretty big curves they have, but not too much because there's not a lot of traction on them. You want to stay on the black stuff as much as you can, so I need quite a bit of anti-roll at the front, not so much at the rear. It seems to work, and quite a low ride height for good top speed. Not too much brake pressure. I always find turn 1 in Brazil going into the center S's really easy to lock up. Like even if I run like super low brake pressure, I don't know what it is. I just I quite I need to do like 10 or 15 laps to get that right, like consistently. So yeah, I'll be doing a bit of practice after this video for the league race actually. But 86 and 52 and 23 and 21.5, 8 ballast. Yeah, works for me. So there is a wet Brazil setup. No, there's not. Oh, yeah, serious. It was above it. There we go. 211 with 9 ballast. Pretty even diff settings. All the way to the right, all the way to the left. 11s all round for the suspension. Maximum firmness, anti-roll and ride height. Quite a bit of brake pressure as well, with as much to the rear as possible. And actually some decent tyre pressure. You could probably empty those, to be honest. Let's do that now. I'm sure that would be way better. But also maybe need some softer suspension if you do that. So drop those down as well, maybe. Yeah, anyway, try that. And then finally on to the last, and probably my second least favourite track, Abu Dhabi. I don't know what it is. It doesn't like me. I don't like it. Had some pretty bad luck there in league races, and yeah, just because it's the last race, don't really get to do it much, race there much, but yeah, I don't know. This setup's not too bad. They don't have a wet setup there, obviously, so it never rains in the desert. 2.7 wings with 8 ballast. Any more than that, and I found that the through turns 2 and 3, going up the hill at the end of the first sector, it was too oversteery and it easy to slide out. So especially when your tyres became a bit worn. So like I said at the start of the video, these setups are mainly for league racing and career mode as well. They're pretty good, depending on the car you have, of course. You might have to tweak a little bit, but Yeah, for equal cars in multiplayer, these setups are pretty decent. So 2.7, 65, 65, all the way to the right, all the way to the left. Again, another super bumpy track. All the bumpy tracks are at the end of the season. So 2-1, don't need any anti-rollers, not too many long corners. And then ride height pretty low for good, top speed, just critical, difficult to overtake. If you're slippery in a straight line, it's hard to overtake anywhere else. And brakes 90 and 51. 51 seems a bit random, but anyway, obviously works. Tyres 23.4 and 21.9 with the 8 ballast, which is obviously my comfort zone for ballast in this game. Like a lot of people that I've seen run at least one click higher, most tracks running 9. I just find it too oversteer on most tracks. So yeah, I prefer a bit more of a stable setup. And I believe that's it. So yeah, that's been this video of my F1 2018 setup. Sorry for jumping around all over the place in this load setup menu, but yeah, I wish there was a way where we could sort the setups either by location, so track or name or date even would be nice. I mean, if you save them chronologically, they will be saved in date, but then if you want to save over them, it kind of changes the date anyway, so it defeats the purpose. So yeah, hopefully that's something Codemasters can do for us and put in something where we can sort our setups a bit easier. But yeah, cheers for watching. Yeah, I know it's a bit late for F1 2018 with F1 2019 coming out in a matter of days for this video, the setup video for this game, but yeah, maybe it'll help some people, and I think it's a good reference point as well for F1 2019. I'll certainly be watching this video back rather than I considered writing all my setups down manually, like by hand or typing them out or something, but I think doing a video like this is way easier, and just be able to watch it back on YouTube, to see what kind of setup I had at a specific track for F1 2018, so I can compare it in F1 2019. But thanks for watching. If this helps you out, leave a like and subscribe. So cheers, thanks for watching.